So, last session for the day. Hope to catch up some time again. It's not too many slides in there. We want to talk about some idea which came up actually our last year's workshop. So it was in a breakfast discussion where we talked about like how could it be that we have so many standards out there, but there's none which really describes modern software development practices. And actually, we had a strong intention to have a standard. It was more like get a specification, get guides, and have best practices, principles, what you can make use of. But if you want to come later on and work in a regulated industry, the regulated industry often asks for which standards you're conforming to. And there's actually something within the European Union. If you want to make something being respected for products, you cannot have an easy open specification. So you should come with whatever number you can refer to. And for this, we said like, well, let's start it from a practical perspective, collecting things, and then see how we turn it into standard, maybe with the Joint Development Foundation, which is within Linux Foundation, which also has the SPDX open standard. So make this an open parts. So this is fully about open parts. Standard is just like there for having a reference. Let's not give it here. It's more introduction to the idea. What we have so far is that most standards somehow in a way incorporate the V model. And it's not saying that you have to follow the V like a waterfall. And you also have the ways around with little small V's already. But still, depending on whom you talk to, the people would say, well, you should at least start it somehow at the top left of the V. Later on, you can do iteration, but it should start from there. This does not reflect like software-centric development where you start with the code and a lot of things. And well, I'm not sure if any project in the world, not even the OSS alone, is strictly following the V. I'm pretty sure there could be an exception, but I'm not aware of anything. And if you look like the ISO 26262, it also asks like, is your software quality managed? What kind, you should provide some parts of quality management. It doesn't say explicitly what you should do. You should just give an argument. What you typically find out is like a spice is the way to go the level before you went into an ASIL level, so SQM, or alternative, like more on a global scale, the CMMI, which is not on this project specific part, but more on organizational level. Some talk about ISO 9001 as a simpler entry point, but still there's a lot about these kind of things. And there somehow you try to get a quality baseline, right? So to enter the space of safety. And this is maybe an important thing. We're not talking about a safety integrity standard here. We just want to talk about best practices, which will help any kind of development, not necessarily safety alone, any kind of use case. And so far, we haven't been able to find any quality standard which matches established open source development practices, which is really also CI-centric and go in this field. Still, there's good quality and high quality in open source development. So this is just there. And of course, I cannot go without the XKCD thing about the different standards, because like there are already standards out there. If someone comes up with a proposal where these things fit in properly, that's the valid option path. We'll come to this soon. And yeah, the thing is also that we want to, from the Go perspective, want to evaluate and document established open source development best practices. We don't want to put any burden to someone or projects to maintainers to basically focus on documenting what is existing, what you do not directly see. So we want to look into projects and then have a guide, an assessment guide, or how to look into this and how to rate then different projects. So it has a very good connection to trustable parts. While trustable writes down already a lot of things to look at and say do you have control of all the dependencies and so on. And we would more say, and then also say, what is the best practice around it to describe a little bit more what it is. And I think that's the connection, how things get together. And in the KPIs, we may end up in a similar space again to say that that's an overlap also. It's very important to get in touch with the trustworthy. And what we bring in is like, we saw like 3 phases, and that's again, I have it still in there for Daniel. It's still the convocation. Yeah. I planned to remove it, but I couldn't find my updated one. So this is the thing which nobody found during the review as well, so we have a typo in there. Need to correct it really. So anyway, phases in there, 3 parts of it. There's a determination of status quo, then defining the practices, and pilot and projects. And this is like what you see here. Here's part 1, that's part 2, and that's part 3. And what this diagram is like, we want to have a base fundament on the demands. So there's demands from various kind of standards. There's also other parts coming up. It may be helping for Radio Equipment Directive, Cyber Resilience Act, whatever you come up with, like a CSER and YAS. So this can be supporting in this. And it should be put on white shoulders on a lot of people. So we want to look into academia, public sector, open source communities. We look into different industries. And that's why we also, for example, started a survey with the Linux Foundation Europe. And I launched it there and not directly as an ELISA effort, because we wanted to break out of our bubble. So we didn't want to go into this whole thing of just being in automotive or aerospace. Yeah, and then the funding part of there, we started this, as I said, last year, and it took us a long time to just go like to these little few slides, because just one of the activities. And we said we need to have participants who are actively contributing. We need to maybe put it in a framework like a project, an initiative, or whatever, should have a happy home. And therefore, we also put in survey like, do we get sufficient funding? Is there really interest by people in spending money in there? And so for this, oh, I don't know where this stands there. So that we need to file with a press release and survey and preparation. It's not, it's out there. And I thought it's already was away. We also approached already Chaos and SCV people. We're having draft files on open chain. So it's just like first part on this. I wonder if it's really the latest version. Let's see. We already get the survey sneak peek, right? So it's just released and you already have the first results. Like we said, academia, OSS community, other parts from the respondents, 88%. Right, we mainly promoted via LinkedIn, social media parts, the Linux Foundation newsletter. So obviously, the most subscribers of these parts are also from industries. Right, so therefore, it's the way how to spread things. It's not super surprising, but we also have public sector engagement, open source freelancers, so it's in there. Again, then for going wider industry, 50% plus were from automotive, and then around 2 to 12% each from robotics and aerospace. So we cover like 80 to 90% in these 3 domains. Yes, so we thought when someone wants to contribute and who's filling out, we want to get a little bit of background on how experienced you are and how familiar you are with functional safety standards, with quality standards. So, and also your experience with open source. You can see like there's a good chunk of this, like 65% who really bring background extensively in open source parts. Still 45% also for quality management. It doesn't mean that these are the same people, right? This could also just be the other way around. It's really not a correlation or anything between these 2 numbers. It's just like there's a mixture of both. So some they have both, some they have just one or the other. But it gives us a little bit of variety already in the answers. And still, then independent of where you are, like you see that's they were just like the 45%, which they have extensive or moderate level, some limited parts. Still 65 judge quality standard based on open source best practices as extremely relevant. I mean, otherwise they may not have taken the survey anyway. So but it's all between extremely and very relevant, and we come to like 85% of the total respondents say that it's really in their field of interest, which also like leads to some like engagement. So areas of participation, we see that the most people want to participate in meetings. They would also be willing to provide feedback, which we have with 93%. then also reviewing draft documents are there. So you can see really, this is a part of I listen and observe, and I join after you've done the things, right? That's what I get also from my managers, where I say, can you provide me some input? And then they just come and say, yeah, I'm happy to review the things. Then no, input before, not reviewing the output. But that's just where we are. What I was really happy about to see is that working actively in the working group, and we have 50% of the respondents, and also 40% piloting the standing within the organizational project. I mean, this is also something, it's more like providing feedback to the proposed standard.
And it's not anonymous, so you know who said that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We know.
So it's a good question. There are some respondents. So we split this up. So if you say like I have more interest in the standard, then you go on one part of the survey, and if you say no, I'm not really would like to contribute, so then you don't. And in this part, you should give your mail address. If they are all valid, we don't know. But this was very important for us to see like how can we engage. And yeah, for the fundraising, you can see this is a complicated thing. You also don't know which possibility they have. It may turn out when we talk more about working actively in the work group that there's also more coming, but at least we identified spot 3 companies which would be willing also to fund this activity. It's already a start, right? Yeah. And
then fundraising can go for public funding as well. So,
yeah, exactly.
So this is then work to do, not
yeah. And what is also nice to see is was not only taking the survey, also otherwise there were people responding and just dropping mails and like saying, how can I interact? So I always encourage them also still to fill out the survey, because that makes our life easier. So that's the point. I think there's the main thing. And we came here for this presentation. I don't want to present all the time, so we can have some brainstorming elements. Basically, this goes to, maybe we're saying we prepare this to the 3 stages of it. We are in this analyzing existing OSS development practices phase, and we want to see also like which standards exist, where can we hook on, which are under the draft. Is there something from academia which you judge as very relevant, and then move up from there. So for this, I prepared. Do you want to add something, Gab, explicitly on this?
No, well, I mean, here, we have the most phases and the challenges that come, with each of them. So, yeah.
So we can use this also for brainstorming. I just brought this also in for discussion points, right? What to consider, what are we missing? Community technology. Is it over engineering? Like, are we wanting too much with putting it like this, or you see high risk? It's like 3 discussion parts. And I made another Slido and just asked like which related standards do you know? So if there's anyone, so if you just have something in mind, either go to slido.com and type in the number, or just scan the QR code and just like say, okay, this is beyond. I think someone mentioned something about a software development standard 27 something or so series, which I missed. There was someone in the room during the last 3 days, which says this goes on software. It's a software development standard, and I don't know, like, wasn't aware of the number, just going somewhere. So yeah, I think it's good that it says anonymous. I didn't know that there's like names or so coming up. It's good.
I see 615.
Yeah, I mean that's the one which we're interacting with. This is standard ones. It's very good.
Yeah.
To start with. And I think we may also go with I don't know, ISO 9001 is nothing, I guess more on organizational level, but I'm not aware of like is there really software development standards? Yeah. Funny talk about the what I once learned is like the 61508. there was a pre-standard considered with 1508, so they waited a little bit in the IEC part that they could get the 1508 number again with the 6 in front. That's what I wanted as an double legend. Yeah, I think what we haven't touched yet was really the 21434. And it's nothing which we considered that much. It's maybe a little part. Yeah, 66 is one good one. Yeah, the past those. I guess this could be the one which I was thinking of the 12. I know the 12-207 was. Yeah, I don't remember whether I
I think I know that. The one we also considered beginning of
Software lifecycle processes.
yeah.
this is the software lifecycle. Ah, there's a software lifecycle thingy, right? Which we sort of touched here. We haven't thought about this, but we should check into this one definitely. Should have gone for workflow because now you don't see the yeah. So we have no item 666 anymore.
Philipp.
Yeah.
Who referred to 147 and we managed to map what's this in Zen 147.
You managed to map the processes
In Zen.
in Zan to the yeah.
But gaps are like super minor.
Yeah. I assume so. It's you can have to wait. There's still a little bit of typing, so we'll give a moment for anything. This is exactly why I want to have this brainstorm because there are numbers and abbreviation coming up which I never heard about. And this gives like what I want to say, like we really try to figure out is there something related to where we can hook on, where we base on, where we extend also, and find a good match where we bring in the ideas. Or we can just say that's closely related because this also helps in creating. So let's do two participants typing. Maybe someone just ask a large language model.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the QR code was passed to Gemini.
Yeah, and it's just like watch quality standards so you know which are related to software development. I mean, I actually haven't done this, which I would normally do. Okay. I will keep it for this right now. I have the more open question where people may end up. You get the yeah. Which open source projects should be considered? So, which open source project do you think are delivering best practices these days? I think it's just like who was the last answer.
Is that a bug? Is that a bug in the slide though, or?
No, I think you should move on to the next question. Most likely the participant hasn't recognized the next question. Or you protocol, yes. So we have one. So now we have the right question.
Okay.
It takes long to show.
So the which OSS project should be considered for the like as examples for best practices.
Yes, of course. And somebody already mentioned that. That's
Yeah.
Thank you, whoever that was.
And I think it could also be like we need to definitely look into the Linux kernel development
so,
process.
Yeah,
That's some obvious one.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's not only the fact that we have to look into project that also not, even if not all the practices of that
Yeah.
project
I
are
mean,
good. We
what
have to
would
look
be-
at which
Yeah.
practices they have that could be
Yes.
replicated in Arctic, and those we
Yeah.
can point out.
Yeah.
So,
What I also would like to see is, if we have project examples which are not coming directly from this safety critical path, because, since ever some security activities are coming, even CIP has a certain thing on cybersecurity, they are not directly related to safety, but they had this in mind. You can also say like ThreatX would be a project because it has already certification, but it wouldn't, to my extension, wouldn't fall in because it has been certified because, before it was open source. So,
Rust, yes.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's, you really have to look into.
Exactly, Rust Thompson.
Right.
Yeah, and they proved it already because it's like easy to certify them continually.
I think what's also good, I mean, looking into like Arduino IDE, this is like the widest,
Now that it's
a good
about
thing to just look for it, because we should have a wider perspective also on different kind of open source projects. I guess our goal will be later, very closely related, or where we start with like device software, but just think just from the limited file in which we're in, and it should be open for everything. So we should check.
Are there any open source monitors and things like that, and user space types of programs to run on all of this that people think are good examples? Oh, single, yeah.
Yeah, you can please look at language and edit that's really not done.
I was thinking if we shouldn't look at those biggest, most used projects, even if we are not sure that their best practices are there.
Yeah,
But because if we just think, oh, we don't know if their practices are very good, and we don't look at them, but they are the most used open source
Yeah, maybe,
projects.
maybe someone can just.
So curl,
Yeah,
for example,
most
comes
used.
to my mind, curl, I don't know how they develop curl,
Yeah.
but curl is used, yeah, it might not have a very good practice, we want to point out, we should look at it at least,
Yeah, you
because,
should have looked, yeah.
because it's used everywhere, right?
yeah, so there are some places that give surveys. It's a question though of the methodologies being used. Most of the methodologies trying to determine the most commonly used don't even think about operating systems and compilers,
Yeah,
which is a complete flaw
Yeah.
in their analysis as far as I'm concerned. But that's just me. So understanding what is most used is sometimes hard to, what is your metric to decide what's most used?
yeah, but if I think of this picture of everything
Yeah.
built upon, yeah.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
down there,
Those
they
foundational
should
pieces.
be at least, you looked into and see what practices do they have, but, and if you can't find anything, perhaps that could be a feedback also, but still.
The biggest ones are curly.
Most used one, I think.
Is it the biggest ones or the most popular ones?
Yeah, the most used one, I would
Most
say.
used ones.
Yeah.
To take, it was not very big,
Uh-huh.
but apparently everyone needs it.
Yeah, I've seen it also. Thunderbird. Oof.
Well, there's certainly going to be some really good practices.
Mhm.
Doesn't say that anyone is typing.
Next question.
I have a third question. And this is the most tricky one. Anyone, it's like a joker. Anyone is aware of existing publications in the field.
I would go and look at what a lot of the MSR publications, there's probably stuff there. Mining software repositories and international ICPC, International Conference and Program Comprehension. Is stuff that tends to be relevant to this in the historical archives.
Is it MSR?
And the
When it's
solid,
on-
and the solid stuff already exists, it's not a publication, but it's there. And then,
Oh, best practices badge in the security space.
Is it like a publication thing?
They've got,
Like, I think we are talking about academia more now.
okay,
So like really like, is there something created by universities, by studies, not?
Well, it was
See, this
created
is-
through a university, well,
Okay, yeah.
whatever. But it was,
Yeah,
Made
but I mean, this is like
available.
academia interaction. This is like.
yeah,
the
this is the
field which we
academia
have.
interaction, okay? Jesus,
I mean, it,
okay, good man.
well, I can say it anyway, one of them is probably ICSI, which is the major software conference, software engineering conference. And the other one probably is ICSMI, which is about automated software engineering. And also, and there is also ASE, which is automated software engineering, I mean, the big one. But it's most related to tools for improving software engineering and this kind of thing, that maybe there is a fit for that.
I think it could be good ones.
I'm going to write it there.
What's the name? You should talk to Claire Dillon because she's not part of Lero. And they will do definitely something with open source. And I also need to look into it, but I haven't yet.
I would also say Julia Lemon.
Yeah.
Papers. With the, work pattern.
Who's the report and report to the
Yeah.
government randomly issued recently.
I mean, it's a hard thing because also like finding them and looking into it. But I can say I started at least to look into something, and the nice thing about it's like when you have academia, you find references, right? Because often the papers at least refer to something, and the references are not super exhaustive, like pointing to new publications, and the quality also varies a lot, but there is something which was used by the Eclipse Automotive Process Big, where they just started with like some open source development practices publication. Interesting enough, they describe the workflow in there, how open source is getting developed, but they describe the workflow. So the paper is like 80 years old, more or less, I would say, and it was taking things and completely misses certain CI perspectives in there. So it says like, even from the flow, it says like the testing comes later in time or other parts. But there's really a big, so it gives you some base, but it's not really reflecting the latest state of the art. And it's just like 5 to 7 years ago, but software evolved in the last 5 to 7 years. And I mean, seeing, yeah, so this is like where things come in. Thanks for all the types in there. I think that's where we need to start, and we need to look into figure out what.
Stefan Touchner's PhD thesis, but it's not public yet. I can ask him. It's more on the security side, but
That's what I'm sort of thinking, is it's a lot of security papers that are gonna be relevant here.
yeah,
That's kind of what I was talking about.
More referring to is primarily focused on cybersecurity, but what's really nice about it is that it goes through sort of like, these are the different types of best practices we think we're looking for, where some examples where it's not an example of a standard, but it kind of points to the territory and points to some examples.
Are we expanding this into the AI space at all or not? Okay, just checking. I'm trying to get the guardrails here.
I guess we have a lot of things to do.
Oh, I know. I'm just.
Too early
put
to
the
know whether
guardrails.
there are best.
And it's also very heavily evolving, right? It's really, yeah. Ask ChatGPT, yeah. I mean, most, I don't know. Either, yeah,
You can,
we're coming a
you
little
can
bit-
use Open Web UI, yeah. Configure like 20 GPTs and ask them the same question. And
Really?
it will run in parallel on your local PC. You can start a Docker container. You can pull down different models, ask them the same question. Your PC will be dead for days then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can ask them the same question, which is cool, which is great.
Yeah, what I found very interesting actually. There was a flaw in one of the chat interfaces where I put in this question to ask for something. It was like we had in the other day, where it's like, what's the difference between safe and safety? And it just asked for something. I don't know what kind of prompt I did, but it didn't stop responding. And you could see that there was a lot of data which actually processed from the models or tried to get things together. Like I just saw all the text passing by, flying by, and I got so many spots where this had been would have been super interesting, but I had to kill the prompt because it was just mapping out everything. But it was really, really good. The sources of it are some part of the model, not really the result.
Mhm.
As
With
well.
that, I think it really makes sense, and
Then the paper is about tracking software
okay, cool.
systems.
That's like the papers.
Yeah, I forgot to add the name.
Or,
And this of Stefan is not available yet. But we get a pre-PDF if we wanted.
that would be, I mean, pre-PDF would be also good. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the topics that came up was, as best practice is about community engagement as well. It's maybe something we don't necessarily think about because we're thinking formalism, but it's an example of best practice. I think that's something to bring through as well.
I mean, to have community engagements as part of the best practices.
Yes.
Yeah.
And examples of good community engagement. Kind of guidance.
Okay, yeah. You have the minutes open?
I didn't catch that when I was trying to catch a number that's behind your head body right now, but that's okay.
That's because we didn't forget the community engagement and just that's the best practice for community engagements. Yeah. So, and just very concrete, I mean, we started also for the academia perspective. We started to look for these part of things and want to bring this also as an overview as a first item into our repository.
Also the Swebok.
Yeah, this is something.
One problem with academia writing these kind of things is that usually you cannot publish them in research venues. This is very difficult to explain why the best practices are supported by research.
Yeah.
Usually what you can find is people checking whether certain practices are done or not in certain projects. So for instance, if a given project is developing according to their own guidelines, there is some literature on that kind of stuff. But if you just go and write a paper saying projects should be doing this and this and this, that's not going to fly in a chemical conference because people are going to ask where's the evidence that that's needed. And the evidence is very difficult to collect because in the end it's a matter of opinion in many cases, and in others it's quite difficult to find the actual evidence in large numbers so that it can really be something that can be spread.
There are empirical methods that you can collect the evidence. I mean, this is an industry forum, and you could collect empirical evidence.
No, of course, but that's the kind of thing that is not easy to do from academia. What I mean, we can go to repositories and get a lot of information from there, but you can, it's very difficult to extract good practices from that. What you can do is, for instance, survey the industry and say, what do you want to have in the papers and so on. But that's difficult to do, even because it's difficult to get people answering to that, even if you want to do the effort of doing this.
And I can contribute something that we have done recently as I'm part of a research project where a lot of partners have been invited from different industries, and it's possible to submit to incentivize people to contribute because you can submit a call for paper, for example. So you contribute experiences from different companies, and then this can be submitted as a call for paper from different companies. It goes into an industry track.
Yeah.
Can go into an industry.
It's also a good idea to just also set it up as an own pass. What I found so far was with existing, or with public, just like I had like 4 to 5 publications, which I mainly looked into. And what I could see is that they then also refer to certain projects which they assessed and where they looked into, to where they based their study on, and where they just said like, we assessed several different projects and tried to find commonalities on what they have done, how they develop software. And this was also the intention, like looking into this, figuring out like what is there as a base of documentation next to the projects which we select, and then just say like, what do they have as best practice, write this down. And the intention is to now start and coming up with the first list of publication which we can find, and just give a little bit of hint like what they are talking about, to bring this also forward to the Open Source Summit Europe and present their like first report on what we have analyzed. So like, what do you call this paper of papers? It's not really, we don't, yeah, when we don't try to really create a paper, maybe a white paper or something like this, or a sort more report form. So it's not like that we really would like to, or we have not intended yet and consider to publish this into a major conference. And it's a question like, would this be something which is the place to go?
But if we have companies involved and use the kind of thing that we say, that could be perfect to fit the industrial tracking exit, for instance.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that you need to have that supported by companies. I mean, people from actually working on this, writing the paper and collecting information from peers in other companies and saying, we want to see this kind of things because of these reasons, no open companies. And in that case, that is generating trust for us. And that in itself can be a paper.
Okay.
Because the research there is, what do these people think? And you need to frame it not as this is what we think is best for open source, but this is what is best for industry.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
industry is expecting this from open source.
yeah, and we are, I mean, anyway, we don't want to say anything which is best for open source. We just say then which is best in open source,
No,
and
what I
would
mean
be
is
best
that-
for industry.
Yeah, exactly. But what I mean is best practices by itself
Yeah.
may could be interested as this is what open source could be doing. And I think the right framework is this is what the industry expects from open source, which is a bit.
And then, or from open source stewards, if we want to tie it back to the CRA, which gets attention right now.
It could be a positional paper as well. I mean, it could be something short to make a statement, let's say, let it be defended. As opposed, and that could be a position to influence standard. I mean, it's I mean, this is something that we definitely
For all this, because it's his head of all this.
And link a little bit about that. Is the person that added RTCA 0395 can name himself? Is it QMAT that added this? The RTCA work on the open source software usage for the avionics standard? Or someone else? And the reason I'm asking is I'm planning to join the UK counterpart of that working. So which could be a place to bring some paper to bring
Yeah.
the discussion. And so if the person that added the DO 395 is participating to a LTCA version of that working group, that can be interesting.
Right. Let's just see, these were some. Okay, I'll also link them to some. But so I think it gives me a hint, and it's something to trace on, and this was really the intention to just like, I have the chance to have virtual participants and people in the room just bring in some brainstorming ideas, and I think therefore was a good forum to just have it directly written down here. And we can work forward on it. We will go step by step. We'll soon also look into the people who have showed interest, because we don't want to wait for long. So we go into May, which we are now. We see that the respondents are settled. And I will present it next week as also talks about the standard idea to the VDE, DKE part in Germany about so where's a large functional safety conference, which for multiple representatives which have a lot strong quality and background, and they are actually people who are also discussing the third edition of the IC 61508. So I will put up the QR code there and see if there will be respondents then, but afterwards I think we do an interrupt, try to get the people together who try to set up the first maybe initial meeting or a mailing list or whatever. Just make things, get things forward. And then have hopefully we will also present it at the Open Source Summit US. Gavin and I will go there, present the principles of the idea, and we can also utilize already some content. And then Open Source Summit EU will be your next big event. As a milestone and like good, like here's a date where we have a result to work on.
We need to present the digest.
Yeah.
From all of this.
Exactly. So expect a summary of this latest by the August time, hopefully some first ideas already. So I guess then this is just the further notes, which is basically, I thought if I type something in, it's so that for the open discussion, maybe also bring some in afterwards, listening to the discussion once more, if we have recorded. And this is actually the last slide which I had in the presentation. We're back to schedule. Maybe stop the recording and then go over soon to the wrap-up session.
Okay. Video. Okay, video in there.